time was the last time that you had any cause or that you noticed that you had the Fitzgerald in front of you, over? 1900.
It was 50 years ago today that the first plate was laid on what would become the Great Lakes' most recognized ship, the Edmund Fitzgerald.
You know, we seem to have every 7 years, we seem to have a big catastrophe up to the Edmund Fitzgerald. So we had the Steinbrenner that went down with loss of life. We had the Carl Bradley on Lake Michigan in '58. On Lake Huron, the largest ship ever lost there, the Daniel J. Morrell, went down in November of '66. So all of these November gales, the Bradley, the Morrell, the Fitzgerald, and then the cycle stopped with the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I've never heard a real clear answer on why that is. The weather has certainly been even more nasty than what we saw. That storm was a typical storm, not an event storm like we saw in 1913 or the 1940 storm. But with the Edmund Fitzgerald and the big song, and then everything just kind of stopped. Perhaps it was a bigger awareness, you know, that this could happen, and maybe it did get some of those captains that would put on, you know, take into the storm and take those chances. Maybe it made them think twice, and that could be part of it. Also the big 1,000-foot ships. We don't have nearly as many freighters on the Great Lakes anymore. There's 12 1,000-foot ships that do most of the hauling. And although they haul, you know, 70,000, almost 2 times what the Fitzgerald held, I think that we see less trips. We see them more often in a 10-foot sea to pull and hide from the storm, even though they're twice as high as a Fitzgerald, they're bigger, and they could easily endure that. But I don't think anybody thinks that there couldn't be another giant storm that could sink a freighter. It could happen at any time.
There was a lot of areas in the eastern UP that were without power. You know, that's one of the things happened at Whitefish Point. The light was out, and also the RDF, their radio direction finder, was out. And that was a time frame when I first started sailing in '77 full time. Even when I was a captain, a few years later, and mate first and captain, you know, we were tugs, which a lot of times don't have the same equipment that ships do. Generally, they have them a little sooner. But I remember our first LORAN-C we actually even had, which only gave the TDs, the time distances, which you would plot together and then string a line to see your course made good and position yourself on the charts. So I do know at that time frame, they relied a lot on the RDF, lights, and possibly, I don't know what they had for equipment, but they may have had LORAN-C, but it was before GPS. And one of the things a lot of people have speculated and a lot of people have talked about is, oh, the weather, why did they go out, or this, that, or there was nowhere near the weather technology there is now.
This is Superco, Roger, we have it. Do you think there's any possibility that you could come about and go back there and do any searching, over? The sea out there is tremendously large. If you want me to, I can, but I'm not going to be making any time. I'll be lucky to make 2 or 3 miles an hour going back out that way.
Feet of water on those hatches, crushing in those poor, you know, those thin steel covers. And I know that from being down there, that hatch number 1 and hatch number 6 are collapsed into the ship itself from the weight of those waves that came on, and that's what put it down there. Whitefish Point has always been there to tell the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald. In fact, Edmund Fitzgerald's daughter was instrumental in helping the museum get its start. And it's gone for, you know, decades that we've rang the bell for those 29 men and an additional time for other sailors lost on the Great Lakes. We would not miss on the 50th anniversary for sure. And they've got a major celebration. The problem is it's limited space, and it's November in the Upper Peninsula. So it's very difficult to plan to do anything. So they will limit the amount of people, and then they'll put most of it on the internet with a live broadcast to allow more people to feel, you know, that presence during this 50th commemoration of just such a tragic day.
As Gordon Lightfoot put it, the legend lives on.